I thought I'd do this simple film as an insight based on my own experiences and thoughts of watching and reading other reviews, and from people's comments on reviews generally. So sit tight, brace yourself, and in no particular order of importance. No. Some reviews concentrate on technicality in excessive ways. I'm talking about an in-depth appraisal of the chips on the circuit board type approach. I'm not affronting manufacturers who clearly have to be very technical and technical centric in product development, but ultimately we need to be concerned with how products appeal in the real world, which is just like manufacturers anyway. They test based on technical features and then product listening. From a reviewer's point of view, someone who is interested in convincing consumers based on the real world experience, to rely on technicality is to take viewers or readers off the hunt of real world product performance. And technical feature sets often don't rate to performance so far as reckoning products by way of comparison, which is what reviews should be about. Also, how can we use excessive product technicality with one product and do it with another, when doing so would lose us to making our real world minds up and introduce bias? Plus, how can we reckon 10 sets of technical reasons in one product and 10 in another to say or imply which will be the best performer before we actually listen? So be aware of this in HiFi reviews. It leads me on to an associated misconception. Having experience of reviewing A to B in a real world situation when you spend some time assessing these products means experience of products is king. I'm bound to say this, of course, but it is so true. I'm reviewing, taking out one variable at a time, getting an iron grip on what a product does, not sitting in a shop with a different acoustic environment, different amp and different speakers, and cables too, which makes for difficult comparison. So it is true that there's no substitute for first-hand experience, but there is also a corollary to this. Well, yes, it is possible. If I sit long enough listening to one DAC or amp or whatever, then I build up an acoustic memory to the extent I remember how good it is. This means I don't need to A and B in situ. If enough time goes by, or I can't remember the character of the component, then yes, this misconception is true. I'm talking here about being able to review without room treatments and similarly enjoy HiFi without room treatments. I find it presumptuous for audiophiles to form views that somehow, because a room doesn't use room treatments, it means that either the reviewer can't review HiFi or the audiophile punter can't enjoy their HiFi to full benefit. If on the one hand you allow an audiophile the ability to have their own opinion about products, why deride them of their opinion about whether they can enjoy the HiFi with or without room treatments? I'm not even saying that I don't agree room treatments can benefit, but what I'm saying is HiFi is all about one's own preferences and what you have which you think is good. If you've ticked that box, job done. It shouldn't be for anyone else to tell you otherwise. That's basically my gripe with the whole, you can't get good HiFi without room treatment, or that the room is somehow taking away from the HiFi and your musical enjoyment. It isn't. Not everyone wants to plaster their living rooms with acoustic panels as well. There are lots of mantras in HiFi that are adopted based on professed wisdom and technicality that often don't apply in the real world. So for example, someone might tell you that you'll get all the frequencies you need from a piece of speaker cable of a certain gauge and material properties that you can calculate, despite the fact that you may actually prefer a different gauge wire sonically. This also applies to debates like amp power requirements, with suggestions that only 30 watt amps are needed for most needs, considering issues around speaker sensitivity, normal listening levels, speaker loads and dynamic shifts in music, despite the fact current tends to go hand in hand with power and current can make speakers sound better. These types of technical assumptions are not always correct, as HiFi is highly technical and multiple factors in the mix make it hard to discern what's going to be actually going on. It makes prediction based on technical discourse fraught with difficulty rather than being easily adoptable. A review means critical appraisal, when criticism is justified, of course. Many people who review give products back to manufacturers if they don't rate them. You can decide if that's the correct approach, but certainly what all manufacturers and audiophile consumers can agree on is that a review is an independent appraisal. It stacks up that if a review is similar to another product at a similar price, which tends mostly to be the case in the commercial competitive world of HiFi, the reviewer should say so. Everybody agrees on that. If the product, on the other hand, is better and it's pretty obvious, then the reviewer should say so, as otherwise the manufacturer who has the 10 out of 10 product loses out and it gets described as an 8 out of 10. So in other words, an honest approach does work for manufacturers and consumers. This breeds confidence for buyers who want to come back again and again with the trust that they get from a good review. I don't buy on the notion that there are so many tastes, like a kind of connoisseur pursuit, to the extent what is best is wildly different for everyone, so somehow clouding notions of best products ever existing. I think that if products are good and stand out, then they will probably stand out to most people. But that's another misconception I'll come on to about subjective reviews. Reviews are not for me, but for you. They are not self-indulgent, therefore. So often what happens is a product can get rated because a reviewer personally prefers it and its sonic quality. Get this, preference and taste compared to product performance are very different animals. You'll be surprised how this can get mixed up in HiFi reviews. I always use this example to make this point, and that's the difference between the Chord Hugo TT2 DAC and the PS Audio Direct Stream. They were for one time about the same price when PS Audio were discounting the Direct Stream. Both have similar sonic quality, but in different ways. I like and rate the PS Audio a lot for its vinyl-like qualities as a DAC, but I wouldn't buy it over the Chord. They have different characters, but there is more than one way to get great sound. I guess what it comes down to is that you have to be aware what other people like, not just you. As much as Jeremy Clarkson doesn't need to know why the design of a wishbone of a Ferrari makes the car better to drive in his experience than, say, a Porsche with a different wishbone, a HiFi reviewer doesn't have to have extensive technical experience to get a point across that a product is a really good one. That's because sound and features are such pretty much anyone can hear or see. I've got good ears like the next man. I'm not hearing things. No auditory illusions like the McGurk effect is going on. You often get this in hi-fi, and it's the exclusive snob thing rearing its head, which I think restricts audiophile hi-fi to a smaller audience. Again, you can't predict sonic quality from lots of variables. It's not an issue just about price too. Consumers spend lots on pursuits nowadays, and we all want that 25-year-old early career £3,000 a year golf membership guy to spend it on hi-fi instead, the mass market if you like, because he will bring the cost down for us audiophiles and through economies of scale. So this kind of bolsters my point. We don't need to make hi-fi exclusive with technical experience. Music isn't exclusive, so why should hi-fi be when it serves the music? But we have already clarified that experience of products in the real world is what you need. So shouldn't the point be instead, what experience do you have of real world operation of products? Hi-fi reviews are subjective, but they have an element of objectivity when you compare, and consensus groups can be formed. If you don't compare, then they are wholly subjective, at least on paper. It's not my subjective opinion that, say, one DAC has this quality to another DAC. I'm actually hearing that common difference, often across a range of gear. Just like Coke versus Pepsi, you will hear that too. In a comparative test, that difference has value that you can, as a viewer, take or leave. So in other words, no subjectiveness comes into it. If you've got Coke over Pepsi sussed out, which is obvious, then equally, are comparative reviews just subjective? I'm not a salesman, or that word people use, an influencer. I'm doing this because I love what hi-fi products bring, and for me, the creative content side too. I do it largely free with very modest income from the channel at present, but a hi-fi review in its truest sense is to give you an appraisal for shortlisting products and trying in dealers first, then ideally borrowing at home. To be honest, I'd far more like it that people didn't believe me straight off. Rather, they went out to try themselves and see if you think what I say is right or not. Then maybe send me a message telling me if you think I've got it right or wrong and why. True, absolutely trust your own ears, coinciding with my point about trying yourself, but I hate to break what is a really common sense point. When you try hi-fi across a range of gear, if it's good on one piece of equipment, it tends to be on others too. No more is this true with digital front-end products like DACs and streamers, but also true with speakers and amplifiers to a slightly lesser degree. Power the speakers sufficiently and you can make judgments of amplifiers across a range of speakers, and the same applies in reverse.